He gave up his eye so he could see more clearly. He hanged himself from a tree for 9 days and 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, teetering between life and death, so he could understand the secrets of the universe. He built the greatest kingdom in all of existence, filled it with the mightiest warriors who had ever lived, and spent every waking moment preparing for a battle he already knew he would lose. He was not the strongest of the Norse gods. He was not the most beloved, but he was the wisest, the most cunning, and the most feared. This is the story of Odin, the Allfather, the one-eyed god, the ruler of Asgard, and the most complex figure in all of Norse mythology. In the beginning, according to Norse mythology, there was nothing. No earth, no sky, no sea. There was only Ginnungagap, a yawning, endless void that stretched in every direction. To the north of this void lay Niflheim, a realm of pure ice and freezing mist. To the south lay Muspelheim, a realm of fire and molten rock. When the ice of Niflheim and the fire of Muspelheim met in the void, the first living being was created, Ymir, a colossal frost giant. From Ymir's body, more giants were born. From the melting ice came a great cow called Audhumla, who nourished Ymir with her milk, and as Audhumla licked the salty ice for sustenance, she slowly uncovered another being trapped within, Buri, the first of the gods. Buri had a son named Bor, and Bor had 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. These 3 brothers looked upon the world of the giants and decided it was not enough. They wanted something more, so they killed Ymir. The blood that poured from Ymir's body was so vast that it drowned nearly every giant alive. Only 2 survived, and from Ymir's corpse the 3 brothers built the world. His flesh became the earth. His bones became the mountains. His blood became the oceans and rivers. His skull was lifted up to form the dome of the sky, and his brains were scattered to become the clouds. Odin and his brothers then found 2 logs washed up on the shore, an ash tree and an elm. From these they carved the first 2 humans. Odin breathed life and spirit into them. Vili gave them thought and feeling. Ver gave them sight and hearing. They named the man Ask and the woman Embla, and placed them in Midgard, the realm of humans, protected from the giants by a great wall made from Ymir's eyebrows. This is how the Norse world was made, not by careful, loving design, but through violence and sacrifice. And the god who stood at the center of that creation, the one who breathed life into humanity itself, was Odin. At the center of the Norse cosmos stood Yggdrasil, the world tree. This was not an ordinary tree. It was an ash tree so immense that its branches reached above the heavens, and its roots plunged into the deepest wells of existence. Everything in the Norse universe was connected through Yggdrasil. 9 realms hung within its branches, and roots like fruit on a vine. At the top sat Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods, where Odin ruled from his great hall. Midgard, the world of humans, sat in the middle, connected to Asgard by the Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. Below lay realms of giants, elves, dwarves, and the dead. At the very bottom, a great serpent named Nidhogg gnawed endlessly at the tree's roots, slowly eating away at the foundation of everything. Odin understood something that most of the other gods did not. He understood that Yggdrasil was not eternal. The serpent was always chewing. The tree was always decaying. The entire structure of the universe was slowly, inevitably, falling apart, and at the end of that decay lay Ragnarok, the death of the gods and the destruction of the world. This knowledge consumed Odin. While other gods feasted and fought and enjoyed their immortality, Odin was restless. He was always searching, always seeking more knowledge, more power, more understanding, because he believed that if he could learn enough, perhaps he could change what was coming. Perhaps he could save his people. Perhaps he could cheat fate. And so began a series of sacrifices that would define who Odin truly was. Deep beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots lay the well of Mimir, a pool of water that contained all the wisdom of the universe. Whoever drank from it would gain knowledge beyond anything a mortal or even a god could normally possess. The well was guarded by Mimir, a being of extraordinary intelligence. Odin travelled to the well and asked for a single drink. Mimir agreed, but demanded a price. The price was one of Odin's eyes. Think about what that means. Odin was the king of the gods. He was the most powerful being in Asgard. He could have demanded the water by force. He could have threatened Mimir, waged war, or sent his armies. But he did not. He understood that true wisdom cannot be taken. It must be earned, and it must cost something real. So Odin plucked out his own eye and dropped it into the well. It sank to the bottom, where it remains to this day, staring up through the water like a pale moon. And Odin drank. What he gained was not just knowledge of facts or events. He gained the ability to see the hidden connections between all things, the threads of fate, the patterns of time, the truths that lie beneath the surface of the world. He lost an eye, but he could now see more than any being alive. From that day forward, Odin was depicted with one eye, a permanent reminder that wisdom always comes at a price, and this was not even his greatest sacrifice. The runes were the most powerful magic in the Norse universe. They were not merely an alphabet. Each rune was a symbol of deep, primal power, a key that could unlock forces of creation, destruction, healing, protection, and death. But the runes were hidden. They existed in the spaces between worlds, visible only to someone willing to pass through the boundary between life and death. Odin wanted them, and the price this time was even greater than an eye. He hung himself from a branch of Yggdrasil. He took his own spear, Gungnir, and pierced his side with it. And then he simply hung there, suspended between the worlds, between life and death, refusing food, refusing water, refusing help from anyone. For 9 days and 9 nights, Odin suffered on that tree. The wind battered him, the cold tore at his flesh. His body wasted away. He was a god, dying by his own hand, on the tree that held the universe together. It was the ultimate act of self-sacrifice, a god offering himself to himself in exchange for forbidden knowledge. On the 9th night, at the very edge of death, Odin looked down into the abyss below him, and the runes revealed themselves. They rose from the darkness like burning symbols, and Odin screamed as he reached for them. He seized the runes, and in that moment the rope snapped and he fell. He rose from the ground reborn. He now possessed the runes, the most powerful magic in existence. He could carve them to heal the sick, to calm storms, to speak with the dead, to bind his enemies, to see the future. No other being, god or giant, possessed this power. Odin had earned it by doing what no one else was willing to do. He had sacrificed himself. This story is one of the most striking in all of world mythology. A god who willingly tortures himself, not for glory, not for power over others, but for understanding. It tells you everything you need to know about who Odin was. He was not a god of brute strength. He was a god of will. Even after the well and the tree, Odin never stopped seeking knowledge. He was restless in a way that no other god in any mythology quite matches. While Zeus sat on his throne and ruled, while Thor rode out to fight giants for sport, Odin wandered. He disguised himself as a traveller, an old man in a grey cloak with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his missing eye. He carried his spear Gungnir as a walking staff and roamed through Midgard, through the lands of the giants, through realms that other gods feared to enter. He was always searching, always asking questions, always gathering secrets. He had 2 ravens named Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. Every morning he sent them out to fly across the entire world, and every evening they returned to his shoulders and whispered everything they had seen and heard. Odin once said that he feared for Hugin that thought might not return to him, but he feared even more for Munin, because a god can survive without thought, but without memory you are nothing. He also had 2 wolves, Geri and Freki, who sat at his feet in the great hall of Valhalla. Odin himself never ate at the feasts. He gave all his food to the wolves and drank only wine. A king who does not eat at his own table. A god who feeds others before himself. Every detail about. Odin paints the picture of someone who had moved beyond the pleasures of ordinary life and lived entirely in the realm of the mind. From his throne in Asgard, called Hlidskjalf, Odin could see everything that happened in all 9 realms. He watched the affairs of gods and humans alike, always planning, always calculating, always preparing. But what was he preparing for? The answer is the same answer that drove every one of his sacrifices. Ragnarok. Odin knew how the world would end. He had seen it in the well. He had read it in the runes. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, would come. The great wolf Fenrir would break free from his chains and swallow the sun. The world serpent Jormungandr would rise from the ocean. Loki would lead an army of the dead against Asgard, and the gods would fight, and the gods would fall. Odin himself would face Fenrir in battle, and Fenrir would devour him. He knew this. He had always known this, and yet he did not despair. Instead, he prepared. He built Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, the most magnificent hall in all of Asgard. Its rafters were made of spears. Its roof was tiled with golden shields. It had 540 doors, each wide enough for 800 warriors to march through side by side. And every day the greatest warriors who had ever died in battle were brought there by the Valkyries, beautiful armoured maidens who rode across the skies above every battlefield on earth, choosing the bravest of the fallen. These chosen warriors, the Einherjar, lived in Valhalla in an endless cycle of glorious combat and feasting. Every morning they fought each other to the death in the fields outside the hall, and every evening they rose again, fully healed, and sat down together to drink and eat and tell stories of their battles. They were training, they were preparing. Because when Ragnarok came, they would march out of those 540 doors and fight beside Odin in the final battle. Think about what this means. Odin spent his entire existence building an army for a war he knew he would lose. He sacrificed his eye, his body, his peace of mind, all for knowledge that ultimately told him he was going to die. And instead of giving up, he chose to face it anyway. Odin was worshipped across Scandinavia, Iceland, and the Germanic world for centuries. Wednesday, Woden's Day, is named after him. He was the god that Vikings prayed to before battle, the god that poets invoked before speaking, the god that kings claimed descent from to justify their rule. But Odin was never a comfortable god to worship. He was unpredictable, even treacherous at times. He broke oaths when it served his purposes. He manipulated heroes and then let them die so they would join his army in Valhalla. He was not a god of justice or fairness. He was a god of necessity, someone willing to do terrible things because he believed the alternative was worse. And perhaps that is what makes his story so powerful, even today. Odin is not a story about a god who wins. He is a story about a god who knows he will lose and chooses to fight anyway. A god who sacrifices everything, his body, his comfort, his eye, his pride, not because it will save him, but because the pursuit of wisdom and the willingness to face the inevitable are the only things that give existence meaning. In a world full of gods who sit on thrones and demand worship, Odin hung from a tree and bled for knowledge. That is why his story has survived for over 1,000 years, and that is why it still matters. If you missed our first video on Zeus, the god who overthrew his father and claimed the sky, go watch that next. And our upcoming video covers the 12 Olympian gods explained, the complete guide to the rulers of Mount Olympus. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and if there's a god, a myth, or a legend you want us to cover, drop it in the comments. We'll see you in the next tale.